So, hello kids. This is a revision video for level 3 of the Scratch of the Unity framework. And in this video, we are going to refresh our concepts that you have learned in class about variables. So, what are variables? Variables, the moment you think of variables, you should think of an empty container. That is one of the best analogies or the closest comparisons that you can have for a variable. Okay, so when somebody just mentions the name variable in a programming language, the first thing that should come to your mind is an empty container. What? Empty container. But what does that mean? So in programming, in the real life, when you have a container, you put something into it, some real object, something that is real that can be touched. But when it comes to programming languages, you what will you put in a container? Uh, um, you'll basically put data, which is basically bits and bytes, but you will never get to see those bits and bytes. But something like maybe it could be a number, it could be an object that you are seeing in the Unity window. So let me just show you the Unity window. So here suppose you have these objects setup and to do. So let's go to one of the setup objects. We have a gun here, which so many people find interesting. So this gun can be a variable. What use will that putting the gun will be in the variable? It will be a way to control the gun that you are seeing in the game view or the scene view from your script. That is the way you connect and control your objects that you are seeing from the game window. With the variable, you can move it around, you can make it bigger, you can rotate it, you can you can connect to a script on this gun and make it shoot. Okay, so all that is done through variables. So without variables, you cannot think of programming in Unity. So first things first, how do you create a variable? Like this. Now you would now what is int? It is the type of variable. Now what are types? Just like you have containers in different types of containers in real life, so too in programming languages you have different types of variables. Now you would ask, why do we need different types of variables? So if you did ask that question, then it's a very valid question, because there are many languages in which you don't have data types. You just create a variable and give it a name, and based on your use it will identify what to do with it. One thing I can understand is that putting variables in creating variable types will make sure you know what you're doing. So you're putting in a number in a variable which is supposed to hold a number. You're putting a monster in a variable which is supposed to hold a monster. So you will tend to make less mistakes. Programming in general is a very, very, very error prone thing. Human minds are not naturally adapted or naturally, they don't think like computers systematically and perfectly. We think little haphazard, so we tend to make a lot of mistakes. That is why many programming languages or there are many different ways by which we try to reduce these mistakes. My understanding is variables, types of variables is probably one of them. Okay, so when I say variables, variable types, so let's see what different types of variables can hold. Int variable is a short form for integer. It can hold a number. So second, the natural question is, how will it hold a number? Simply, you will assign a value. So what is this equal to? This is called the assignment operator, which means you're putting a value on the right side into the variable on the left side. Now this can be done like this also, number equal to 10. Now ask yourself, quickly pause the video and ask yourself, what is the value in the variable number? First you had the container, empty container here, you put 1 in it. Now when you put 10 in it, whatever was there in the empty container gets emptied out. So now the value is not 11, it is not added, but it is emptied out and the new value is put into it. So consider in your mind that the value from the right is coming into the value into the empty container into the container on the left. Okay. And always when you're putting value from right to left, the container is going to be empty first, emptied out. Whatever it holds, it's going to become empty. Now let us see some different types of variables. Now there's something very similar to integer called float, which simply holds decimal numbers. So this holds decimals. I can choose to give it a value at the time of creation. That is called initializing. Okay, just remember this: giving a value to a variable at the time of creation itself is called initializing. Now, why is that important? Because sometimes you want to give a certain starting value to a variable even before you use it in any way. So just remember this term. When somebody says initialize a variable, you have to give it a value at the time of creation. Initialize a variable means giving it a value at the time of creation. Assigning a value is giving it a value after the time after you create it. So online, so ask yourself, where in this code am I assigning a value to a variable? Pause the video, answer the question, and come back. So if you answered line number 14, you are absolutely correct. That is what we are doing.
Here's something I found on the web.
Now let's see some other types of variables. Now when I told you that so what is a game object variable? It is a variable which can hold objects from the Unity scene. So let's call it a gun. So this variable can hold the value from the Unity scene. Okay, and now what all can we do with this variable? We can destroy it. So we say the moment we start the script, why would you destroy it? I'm just giving you an example. So just say destroy gun. This is how you will destroy the gun. You may want to destroy it when a bullet hits it. But I'm just giving you an example. Okay, so this is how you will. Now let's see some other types of variables. Very important is a variable which can hold three float values at the same time. Oh wait, before that let me tell you that when you're trying to assign a decimal number, so a float number can also hold an integer. So this is perfectly fine. But if you have to do 10.5, then you will get an error. Why is that? Because there are two types of variables when it comes to decimal numbers. One is called double and one is called float. The double, you can double means it's a very big float value. If you want to hold a very large number, then you can have a double. So to differentiate between a double and a float, they have given us the option of yeah. So they have given this rule that whenever you have to use a smaller decimal number, then you have to put an F in front of it. If it does not contain decimal numbers, then that's fine. You don't have to do this. But if you have a decimal number which is small, then you have to, and you put a dot, and you put a decimal point, then you put an F after it. Okay, if you don't put this, you will get an error in Unity. Now, how do I assign a value to the gun? I'll actually have to write the code to create a gun. Either I duplicate it, game object dot instantiate, which will duplicate an original gun. So I'll have to again have a original gun variable, or maybe yeah, that is the only way. So I'll have to duplicate and create a gun. The other way to assign a variable is directly through the inspector. Now that's something interesting. How can I directly assign, without the equal to sign, without a code, how can I assign a value to a variable? By directly making it public. And when I make it public, the script, the game of let's see what happens to the script, on the game object on which I attach the script. So it's taking some time. It's gone to Unity. Now what we will do is, let's take a directional line, an empty object, and attach our test file to it. And let's attach a test file. Now you see this gun none game object has come at the bottom. So now I can take this gun from the hierarchy and drag and drop this into here. What this will do is, now my game object has the gun variable has got filled. This has got filled or populated or assigned, filled or assigned with what? With the actual gun from the scene. Okay. So there are two ways to assign variables. One is you make them public and directly assign from the inspector, or you put an equal to sign. You use an assignment operator. Now for numbers you can directly put the number, but for game objects you have to actually write the code to duplicate another game object, which is called the instantiate function. Anyway, let's not go into that. Now, what are the different other types of variables? So let's quickly see and end this so that we can go on to the next video. Now vector 3, what is vector 3? Vector 3 is simply a variable type which can hold three values at the same time. So vector 3, let's say vec, just simple name. Okay. Now how do I assign to vec? Now that would be an interesting question. Can I directly say vec equals 1 comma 1 2 3 like that? Can I say? No. 1 2 3, will it work? Or 1 2 1 1 2 3, if I say, will vec have the three values? No, because it does not know whether you're talking about 1 comma 2 comma 3, or are you talking about 123. So what you have to do is you have to call something called a constructor that we will learn about later. Write the word vector 3, then you have to put the three values. Suppose I'm just giving you an example, x, y and z. They are not values yet, but like for x I will say, let's say 10. For this thing, let's say 17.5. F, if you said f in your mind, very good, congratulations. Now 12.3 f again, because it's a floating point value. This contains three floating point or decimal values. They're also called floating point decimal values, which is three floats basically. Okay. So this is how you assign to a vector 3. Now why is vector 3 important? It's very important because the whole of Unity practically runs on vector 3. How? Let's see. You see this position thing here, x, y and z. This is a set of three values. Instead of saying instead of having three different variables for position x, position y, position z, we just have a position, and then you say position dot x, position dot y, position dot z. Isn't that really neat? Now I can access the three values using this vec dot x. If I say debug dot log vec dot x, what are you going to see? What value are going to, so pause this video and just think in your mind what value is going to be printed. What value is going to be 10? If I do vec dot y, what is going to be printed? 17.5. The f will not be printed, unfortunately. What will happen if I say vec dot z or z? It's going to be 12.3. Okay. So always remember, a vector 3 is the variable which holds. But see, again, vector 3 is used for positions, it is used for scale, it is also used for rotation. But it is not necessary that it is only used for these position type of things. You can practically use vector 3 for anything. So you can say vector 3 age, and age dot first person, you can use that to hold the age of three people or height of three people. It's just a package in which you can put three values. But because the 3D space things like position, rotation and scale, they all use x, y and z, so it's an ideal candidate to be used for that, and the primary purpose is for 3D things only. Okay. Now so vector 3 is a variable which holds a package of three different values. I sometimes compare it to having a, when you go to a hotel, you order something in India, but we get something called a thali, in which you have multiple things in one plate. You have two different types of lentils or dals, and one sabzi, and one a little bit of rice, and maybe puri or roti. So a vector 3 is like that. You get lots of, and in fact a lot of variables are like that only. You get lots of things packaged into one. Like that is x, y and z. Now finally we will go to we'll see one other types of variables. So yeah, so now you already know about components. So each component also becomes a variable, is a type in itself. So the transform, this can be made into a type. So you can create a variable of type transform. Gun, you can, sorry, the animator, audio source, these all can be made into variable types. And how do you assign those values? So let's just take an example of transform. So let's create a value of transform gun trans. How do you assign a value to this? How do you make sure that this transform is the one that the gun actually has? So what we will do is gun trans equals get component transform. Okay, that way the transform this particular not get component, sorry, gun dot get component. If I do simply a get component, it will get the transform of which object? Let's go and see. It will give you the transform component of the directional light, because this object, this test file is on the directional light. So it will give you this particular transform. If I simply do a get transform in this file, it will give you a transform of this object. To get the transform of the gun, I have to do gun dot get component transform. Okay, or there is actually a shortcut that Unity has given, which is simply gun dot transform. Both are exactly the same. Okay, so yeah, that's it. That's Thanks for watching this video, and keep watching this again and again so that your concepts become even more strong.